Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome back to Everyday Consent. Today we have another consent chat with my friend Nate. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Nate.
Hi, I'm Nate. I teach high school. There's not good instruction going on in terms of how to say no.
Yeah, or even would you say to say yes as well?
Yeah, I think that's a big gap in education. And I don't, it's not clear to me where that should be, who, like, there's not a clear mandate for me that such and such should be teaching it, like,
right, because you're a teacher.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so, like, I'm a math teacher, and while I think it's a super important thing for my students to learn, I don't know if my class is the place to teach it beyond just modeling it if it comes up.
Yeah, can you talk about that a bit more? So, like, as a math teacher, you're not sure that it's your place necessarily to be teaching these things. But do you know whose job it would be?
That's something that I feel is another gray area. Like I don't think there's a clear mandate about who it should be. I think. It's very easy to say, like, oh, parents should teach this to their children, or, role models should teach this, or maybe health teachers, which probably is the best, although I feel hesitant because it feels like everything that's just socially weird or awkward gets pushed on to health teachers. Just deal with it. You deal with it. I think one of the issues with the idea of parents should be teaching this is that a lot of parents
they don't know it.
They don't know it. And so they don't have great ways to teach, or they might have kind of anti-consent. That sounds really weird. But they might have really unhealthy ideas about consent.
So you said you don't really have many opportunities to basically model consent in your classroom. Certainly not sexual consent, because that probably doesn't come up very often.
No, once or twice.
But are there, like, smaller, not necessarily smaller, but, like, non-sexual ways?
There have definitely been situations in my teaching where usually a boy is talking to a girl in ways that don't seem appropriate to me, and sometimes they seem like the girl is uncomfortable, but sometimes they don't, and it just and that freaks me out too.
Right. Like what we were saying earlier is that, like, the girls don't necessarily know how to handle it either.
If they don't know how to handle it, and if they've been accustomed to it, if that's the way that things have always happened for them, then it doesn't seem weird. It just seems like this is a thing.
Right.
But when I see that happening in my classroom, I try to step in. I try to turn it into a lesson for the whole class if I can, if the opportunity is right. But it's really important to make sure that I address the student first, and give them a chance to save face and to learn from their experience. Because too often we fall into this pattern of just shaming offenders without educating them, or without giving them a chance to want to do the right thing. Right? If someone gets slammed every time they do something, then they're gonna get vindictive about it.
Right.
So I think so I try to step in, diffuse the situation, get a chance to talk to a student privately, and ideally give them a chance to save face, and turn it into a teaching lesson.
Can you talk a bit about how you do that? Like, how you try to give them an opportunity to discuss it and engage with you about it?
So usually it's it involves pulling a student to the back of the classroom or onto the hall, so that we can have a one-on-one conversation. And I don't always do a great job, and it's often hard to know what to say.
Yeah.
In those moments, and a lot of times I get pushback of things like, "Oh, they like it," or "It's flattering." You know, what's wrong? I'm just, telling her she's attractive. And it's hard to combat that narrative that society has built.
Right.
But I try to be persistent and lay a clear message. And just say the things that I know, that sexual assault is a big issue, and it's often hard to see because we're accustomed to seeing things in a certain way. But when you're making statements or if advances or anything that put someone in that objectify someone, that's not right.
Right.
I hate to say that a lot of times the message doesn't get through, but I'm working on it.
Well, I wish you luck for sure.
I will say one thing that I saw when I was student teaching. My cooperating teacher did an amazing job in a situation like this.
Oh, really?
The situation was not one person directly harassing another one in the class, but one student was showing some homemade pornographic material to others that neither of the people in the video he was showing was him.
Oh, okay.
And so she did a really, really great job of first stepping in and talking to him personally about it, but then calling a restorative circle with the class, and sharing some of her own experiences or her perceptions of people in her past, and how things that they were going through that she didn't know at the time could have influenced their behavior, and then ask them to think about what might the people in this video have been thinking that they wanted to, that they were doing this, and even given the perspective of the video, who does it look like was in control,
right?
And who probably disseminated this video. And we were lucky to have some really, really insightful girls in the class, and really strong thinkers and speakers, who did a really great job responding to that and building community around it.
That's really interesting.
Another type of consent that happens in the classroom is sharing ideas.
Oh, interesting.
Aloud with the class, which is really, really touchy territory for 14, 15-year-olds, even 16, 17-year-olds, even 20-odd.
Right.
Sharing ideas that you haven't totally fleshed out, or that might be in a socially tricky situation, can be really tough. And so there have been times when I've called on a student or asked a student to come to the front to present their work, and they'll just say no. They'll refuse. And so some of the things that have I've tried to build up around that, and I've seen best practices happening in other places, are to, first of all, when the student is working, before I am just in front of the class, to give them a cue that, like, hey, you're doing something really interesting here, and I think it would be really great if the rest of the class sees this. Would you be comfortable with that?
Oh, okay.
And still sometimes they say no. And then I have to respect that. But I found that can be really, really helpful in facilitating classroom discussions, to talk to students directly beforehand, one-on-one, or groups directly beforehand, one-on-one.
To give them warning.
Yeah, and to say I'd like you to talk about this, and then especially because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think another facet to that in the classroom is that there has to be, you have to build up a community of trust, just like you would in a relationship,
right?
Before you can do risky things, and so you need to do work ahead of time. Before you start asking for presentations, or people to share ideas that they aren't sure about, by practicing, like talking about less risky things and getting and there are a bunch of different community builders that you can use around that. But that's a really key thing that I see a parallel being. You need to have trust, and you need to have a community or a relationship before you can start doing riskier things.
That makes sense. Yeah, so I think like both of those things that you just said are really a matter of like building trust and also building, like giving the students a bit of time to get used to the idea, if that makes sense.
And I think giving a clear reason, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that because when you say you tell a student like, here's why I would like you to share, I think that's an important part of it, right? Is just explaining like what's going on and why. What was one of your favorite moments of consent in your life? So,
in college, there was a one-night hookup, and from very early on, she said, "I don't want to have sex tonight."
Okay.
And I was very proud of my response, which was, "Okay. Can you tell me what you do want to do?"